somewhat. I mean, listen, I think that toxic masculinity is very real. Mm-hmm. I also think that there's a yin and a yang to everything. And so I think that soft roads create soft people. And I think that, you know, when you talk about the flip side of, you know, I think that a lot of females are raised in environments that's too soft. And so then they become extra dependent on a toxic male and toxic masculinity because they don't know how to deal with hard things. They don't know how to deal with rejection. They don't know how to deal with truth. I had a very interesting situation with an ex at one point. My puppy is freaking out. She asked me if a girl was better looking than her, and I said yes. And it was very, very, I think to anyone, I think they would have said yes. And she could not handle that. I saw her snap and freak out in a way, and it's like, what? Like, whereas like if I told you, or your wife told you that a guy is better looking than you, you'd be like, yeah, okay.
Mm-hmm. Shrug of the shoulders.
Like, yeah, you're right. Like, awesome. Keep it moving. Mm-hmm. But you know, it's the difference in the way that we're raised. And so I think that there was such a polarization in the way that we were raised that I think that females oftentimes weren't taught how to be strong. And I think that men weren't also taught how to be strong. They were taught how to just be angry and tough.
And keep your head down.
Exactly. I do think that there is, toxic masculinity is huge. It's not something that I feel like I personally struggled with as much. I've always been more of a feeler and felt emotions, and even been accused of being a drama queen. That's why I write really well with stories. But yeah, I see that. I see it so much. And there's other emotions that I have trouble, processing and things like that. Thankfully, and I think this is part of why I am able to teach and share things in the way that I am, and especially at a young age, was because I started therapy when I was 9. And so I've been in this world for a very, very long time. And so I was learning how to process things. I was learning how, at least to try to do them. Kind of like if you, I play a lot of golf, and you can always tell the guys' swings that grew up in a country club and they grew up playing because they have a great swing. They may not always be able to play well, but that's usually because they don't get to play much or practice much. But like, we've got a couple guys in a group of mine from college that there's one guy who, he plays golf like twice a year, and still you just see glimpses of greatness in there. But it's because when he was real young, he was doing that. And in the same way, when I was real young, I've been doing this. I saw whenever I was 16, my dad, again, grew up in a trailer park, single parent home, really tough situation. I watched how he went to a Dale Carnegie course, and it like really, really impacted his life. It didn't help him with me, but like I saw with everybody else, the impact it had on him. And so I realized, oh my gosh, like this can really impact people's lives. And so I started diving even further into that type of stuff. So therapy, and then that, and it's amazing the impact, there's can't remember who said the quote, but it's basically that it's easier to build strong boys than it is to repair broken men. Hold on.
That's no problem. That's true. I recently heard that quote too, and I can't remember where it came from, but something when we talk about that, like, that's what our parents were taught. That's what their parents were taught. And, that's something I don't I don't blame them for that's how I was taught. Like that's all that they knew. But now, like one thing that I've been saying for a few weeks is all these people are focused on the past. Oh, it was so much better in the past. There was there's this in the past. Why do we want to go back to a time where we didn't know what we do now? Like, we know so much more. So why would we stay doing the same things if you know something more, rather than go back? You're saying you want to go back to a time when you were ignorant? Like, I understand that, right? I understand.
Yeah.
There is a sense of like being able to not know the things that you know. Like, that's kind of why we miss childhood, is because ignorance is bliss. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, but knowing what I know now, if I still raise my kids, and I'm not saying like I won't have moments where I'll slip, because there will be, but like, I want to teach my 2 boys to embrace their emotions. And that's what I've been working on with them. Like, I was very proud. I don't know if I told this story on the podcast or not, but the other night I told my oldest, when I put him to bed, I'm like, oh, we're gonna have to trim your fingernails tomorrow. And he goes, oh, why? And I said, I was tired. And I said, because I said so. And he goes, what's that mean? I'm like, trim your fingernails? It's like when you take the clippers and you trim them back and you make them smaller. He goes, no. What does because I said so mean? And I realized, and this was my 4-year-old, that was the first time I ever said that to him. Said that.
Yeah.
And so I laughed, and I explained to him that, no, we need to trim your fingernails. Daddy was tired, but we need to trim your fingernails because I don't want you scratching yourself. I don't want you hurting other people on accident, and they get dirty. And so, that just honestly, it brought tears to my eyes that he said that, and that he feels safe enough to say something like that too, like to ask me questions.
Also, it's incredible that he made it to 4 years old before hearing that. I mean,
thank you. Thank you.
I will say though, not along with what you're saying with that, but I do think this is an important point that I try and share with parents a lot, is that humans are really bad. You see this in relationships a lot, that we pendulum swing. And the thing that I'm nervous about for our society is that, because the way like my dad raised me, and the way a lot of people were raised, they are going in the opposite direction completely. And we're going to suffer as a society because of that. It's always the middle ground. We always have to find the middle, and the middle usually is at the top of a mountain is the best way of putting it.
Yeah.
I don't think you read Transformational Leadership, but in that we talk about how people oftentimes believe that there's only 2 ways to lead. You're either the jerk that's angry and super, super tough, or you're the soft pleaser. And we're like, no, at the top of the mountain is transformational leadership. And that is enforcing healthy boundaries with love and respect. And but the thing is that that's hard. That's messy.
Yes,
and
it is.
It's so much easier to just go to these. It's the same thing in politics, right? It's, oh, let's just go this way, or let's go over here. Like, no, actually, like it's this. There's middle ground of like, we have to wrestle inside of this and figure out, okay, what really is best, not just this reactionary bullshit of it's easy to go on one side or the other on these extremes. No, like it's wrestling in the middle and climbing that mountain. But climbing mountains is hard. It's a lot easier to operate at the base consciousness level that's tribal. And that's why I piss off a lot of people because I'm going to go into right-wing circles and I'm going to tell them things that they don't want to hear when they start talking about, Christianity and Jesus. And I'm going to say, well, guess what? Jesus was kneeling in the dirt with a woman that was caught in adultery. So I think if we have to, if we wonder where we should be, at, when it comes to people that are kneeling, probably with the people that are kneeling. When it comes to people that are hurting and broken, when it comes to violence and guns and things like that, it's kind of tough. And I grew up in Oklahoma. I own a lot of guns. But then when I started actually getting challenged by people that were like, yeah, where do you think Jesus stands on guns? And it's like, oh, yeah, this is tough. Like, let's actually wrestle through this stuff. And then, over here, we should just get rid of, student debt, and people shouldn't have to pay, and everything should be free. And it's like, well, that somebody has to pay for that, but there's no such thing as free. And let's look at socialism, and let's look at and just unpacking on both sides, and it just makes everyone uncomfortable, because it's like, no, there's not these simple answers.
And that's something I love that you said that. It's very having those conversations is very hard. And that's, people absolutely hate to have those conversations. And that's where we want to be as Untapped Keg. We want to have those uncomfortable conversations that people don't want to have. And that's something that my friend that we've met through the podcast, the Bear Project, has. We talk about hard things. We talk about things that maybe we don't agree on. And that's okay. It's okay to talk about that stuff. And it's important to see from both sides and just understand that you're going to have differing opinions. No matter what, my opinion comes from RJ Zimmerman's mind. Your opinion comes from Joshua Metcalf's mind.
Right.
I think that we grew up in this really individualistic society, and it's good, right? It's good to be your own person. It's good to figure things out on your own, and we kind of expect that. But now we have more knowledge on why, let's say, just the mental health thing that we were talking about. One thing that I really want to get into with, and this is just me personally.
Yeah.
We treat the symptom of addiction, and we don't always treat the why. And that's something that I want to get into, is the why. And that's something I didn't look into till we started the podcast for over a year. Why did I drink the way that I drank? Why did I always get blackout drunk? Why did I always try to make people like me? Why did I move from women to women? What was it there that I was missing? So those conversations. So Joshua, before the break, we were having a good conversation about having messy conversations, right? And how what I would say is, there's this saying that perception is 90%, or your reality is 90% your perception, or perception is 90% I can't remember how it goes. Anyway, your perception is your reality, right? How you perceive the world around you. And one thing that we do is we give ourselves echo chambers, especially on social media. It's very easy to do.
Yeah.
And it's hard to break out, but it's necessary in order to change your mindset, find what you're missing in your life. And this is something that your books have taught me, is that nobody's going to come to you with information that you need. You have to seek it out. That's the difference between school and adult life, is that in school you learn the lesson and you take the test. And in life, you take the test and you learn the lesson. And you have to seek out the information that you think you're missing. So, what was the moment for you that made you seek out kind of this change that you made? So for those who don't know, Joshua was you're in the final part of your getting your master's degree, right? You're in like the final stages of
basically. I did all my work. I just had to write a thesis.
You just had to write your thesis, and you made a drastic life change by moving to LA and working at a homeless shelter.
Yeah, and living there. What went into, you deciding that you needed to make this life change? I mean, my whole life I had been focused on, I'm probably going to go to law school. That's when I was at Vanderbilt getting a communications degree. That was the focus. And then I had the, opportunity to go and play out my last year of eligibility at Duke and work on my master's. And I had an amazing experience from an educational perspective at Duke. Got to study under and work with some of the just most fascinating people in the world, and did really well there. I'd always struggled academically, but for the first time, I felt like I had a lot more autonomy in the classes that I got to choose. And it was called a Master's of Arts in Liberal Studies. And so I literally could choose any class across the entire Duke system to take these classes. I could take 3 undergrad classes, and the rest had to be master level classes. And so I did that. I did really well, and had taken the LSAT, was ready to go to law school, had even some scholarship opportunities to law school. And then I had a night where I had this kind of crazy thing happen. And basically it made me think about, what would I do if money didn't matter? And I'd grown up really, really poor. Like my dad, like I said, grew up in a trailer park. I can vividly remember dreaming about Happy Meals whenever I was 6 years old. My dad ended up becoming a very good and successful eye surgeon, but even then, that was more like whenever I was 17, 18, 19, 20. And so the thought of, what would I do if money didn't matter? That just, it was so far away from my mind. And after this night, the thought that kind of came into my mind was, I really felt convicted in my heart that if I would serve people, if money didn't matter, then that's what I needed to do if money did matter. And so I skipped scholarships to law school, and I moved across the country downtown into a homeless shelter in Echo Park, and lived and served there for 7 or 8 months. And really what I wanted to do was, I saw the impact that the sports psychology class had on my life. And I wanted to share that with the masses. And I felt like I was uniquely equipped to do it, because I felt like most of the people that were teaching this stuff were old white guys that had read stuff in books, and they had never done it. And Greg Dale was able to get through to me at Duke because I was the last pick on the team when we played pickup games. He couldn't get through to Mike Grella. Mike Grella was the best player on our team and the best player in the country. He opened his professional career with a hat trick for Leeds United. And
no big deal.
Yeah, like real good.
Yeah.
And he couldn't get through to Mike. And I knew that I could, because I wasn't coming in with educational experience. I was coming in with real experience. There's 2 words in Greek, gnosko and yada. And I may be pronouncing yada wrong. It's Y-A-D-A. But gnosko means to have knowledge of something. Yada means to have knowledge through experience of something. And I knew that I had yada. And I knew that I could look those kids like Mike Grell in the face and say, listen, I have done this. I know what this actually can do. Mm-hmm. One of my favorite things was I was at Wake Forest working with the women's golf program, and there was this young kind of prodigy on the team, and I could just tell she didn't listen to me for anything. And we were out in the hitting bay on like the second day I was there, and I told her, I go, grab a wedge. Like, what? And I was like, yeah, grab a wedge. I was like, you see that target out there? And they literally had a bullseye target, about 3 feet circle, probably 100 yards out. I said, let's see who can hit it first. I hit it on the third try, and I go, now do you want to listen? I was like, I'm not just telling you stuff. Like, I can do this. I've done it. And she did. She started to listen. And there's a lot of those people that are teaching from Gnosko. And it's not that Gnosko, knowledge is bad. It's just that there's a big difference between, knowledge and wisdom. And so I, for whatever reason, just felt really uniquely called and equipped to do that. And so I kind of made that my mission of, love people, serve people, provide value, and really try and dive into this stuff as much as I could and just be able to learn it inside and out, so that I could take my practical experience and be able to share that with people, but then also, be able to understand the science and, the actual technical stuff as well, but be able to put that in a form that actually makes sense to people instead of, there was too much stuff that I was reading in the sports psychology stuff that I'm like, this has been written by people that have never done this, and it's very obvious. And so I'd come in and, you'd have somebody in each school that's like, oh, this is their sports psychologist, or these are the slides our sports psychologist gave us. Mm-hmm. And I would go through and I would shred 30% of it, because I'm like, yeah. And every time the athletes would be like, yes. And I'm like, yeah, no, I'm one of you. I know. I know how frustrating it is. And so, yeah, that's really where that came from. Just a real desire to, once again, there's like, what do I wish that I had whenever I was growing up? Like, what do I wish that I had known? Why did I have to get to Duke to learn this? That was the thing that just pissed me off so much, is I was like, my club team was ranked 4th in the country. Like, I'd been to camps. I'd been to so many things. Like, I played at Vanderbilt for 3 years. Like, Vanderbilt's far from a soccer powerhouse. They cut our program after the 3rd year. But it's not like you're talking about, some community college and, some teeny tiny area of North Dakota. Yeah. Like, why did I have to get to Duke to learn this? And so I just kind of said, you know what? I think I'm more wired to be an entrepreneur. And I think a lot of people that study sports psychology, they want a job. Mm-hmm. I've never wanted a job. I wanted to change the world. And so it probably sounded pretty arrogant when I said it to the director of that program. But I just sent her an email and I said, listen, I'm not going to write a paper that sits on somebody's desk and collects dust. I'm going to create an organization that changes the world. And at that time, it sounded arrogant. At this time, I think I've transformed at least the face of mental training in this country and sports psychology. And, when I got that position at UCLA to be the director of mental training, like, the position didn't really exist.